Is my screen visible?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So we'll start with the Mangalacharan. Om Majnana Timirandasya, Jnana Anjana Shalakaya, Chakshurunmiltam Yena, Tasmai Sri Guru Nama, Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutali, Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam, Vandeyam Sri Guru Sri Yuddha Patakamanam, Sri Gurun Vaishnavansha, Sri Rupam Sagrajatam, Sagana Raghunathan Vidam Stam Sajivam, Sadvaitam Savadutam Paljana Saitam, Krishna Chaitanya Devam, Sri Radha Krishna Padan, Sagana Lalita Sri Visakan Vidamsha, He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpati, Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste, Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Raje Vrindavaneshwari, Rishabhanusuti Devi Pranamami Haripe, Pancha Kalpa Rubhascha Kripa Sindhu Vyavascha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Sri Advaita Gadadhara, Sri Vasadi Gaurabhakta, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So thank you very much for joining today's session. So the title for today is Caturdaśa-Bhuvana, related to the 14 planetary systems in the material universe. So we have already seen some aspects related to this in our previous sessions also, like the ones titled Prakriti, material nature, and even in Mahatattva. So today we'll be looking a bit more detail into the planets themselves. So before we start, just a bit of background. We all know regarding this TOEP, Temple of Vedic Planetarium. So when the project was being conceived and envisioned by Prabhupada, he was saying this to the other devotees during his morning walk on February 27, 1976 in Mayapur. Prabhupada was explaining about his vision for the TOEP, about how the temple should look. So Prabhupada says that it will be a temple and planetarium. So it should be built in such a way that the temple itself will exhibit the knowledge regarding the Vedic planetarium systems. So Prabhupada said, Temple of Vedic Planetarium, that's all. We shall show the Vedic conception of planetary system within this material world and above the material world. We are going to exhibit the Vedic culture throughout the whole world, and they'll come here. So now also, if we go to the TOEP website, we can see many images which exhibit a lot of concepts, like not just related to the material world, but even those related to Vaikunthas and the spiritual sky. Like there are statues of Jaya and Vijaya. So this topic related to the planetary systems and the entire cosmology is also very prevalent in Bhagavatam, starting from the second canto itself. As we saw in all our previous sessions, the creation of material nature, starting from the Mahatattva, and then how every material universe is created, and then the 14 planetary systems. Slowly, it progresses towards the fifth canto, in which there are many more in-depth details are given regarding all these planetary systems, and also about the entire structure of the universe, about how the coverings are layered, the universal coverings are layered one after another, and the distance between planets. All those details are covered in much greater detail, especially in the fifth canto. But we won't be looking at very in-depth details, because it's not possible to compress everything in just one session. So during the first half, we'll be looking at a lot of descriptions from the Bhagavatam related to the 14 planetary systems. And then in the second half, we'll also be looking at the Gita perspective, which is related to these planetary systems within the material world. So from this morning walk conversation, we can see that this Vedic science about the cosmology was also very close to Prabhupada's heart. So he wanted to exhibit the entire knowledge through the TOEP. And here's a verse from fourth canto, chapter 20, verse 35 and 36. Actually, this verse is not directly related to the topic, but the purport is very interesting. Just to give a background related to the topic, this chapter is regarding Prithu Maharaj. So King Prithu worshipped the demigods, the great sages, and the inhabitants of Pitruloka, the inhabitants of Gandharva-loka, and those of Siddhaloka, Charana-loka, Panaka-loka, Kinnara-loka, Apsara-loka, the earthly planets, and the planets of the birds. He also worshipped many other living entities who presented themselves in the sacrificial arena with folded hands. He worshipped all these, as well as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the personal associates of the Lord, by offering sweet words and as much wealth as possible. After this function, they all went back to their respective abodes, following in the footsteps of Lord Vishnu. So actually here, I just want to highlight regarding the purport, because Prabhupada has given the description regarding the planetary systems, which is completely different from the so-called modern scientific theories, which we used to learn in school. In modern so-called scientific society, the idea is very prevalent that there is no life on other planets, but that only on this earth do living entities with intelligence and scientific knowledge exist. The Vedic literatures, however, do not accept this foolish theory. The followers of Vedic wisdom are fully aware of various planets inhabited by varieties of living entities, such as the demigods, the sages, the Pitas, the Gandharvas, the Panakas, the Kinnaras, the Charanas, the Siddhas, and the Apsaras. The Vedas give information that in all planets, not only within this material sky, but also in the spiritual sky, there are varieties of living entities. Although these living entities are of one spiritual nature, in quality the same as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they have varieties of bodies due to the embodiment of the spirit soul by the 8 material elements, namely earth, water, fire, air, sky, mind, intelligence, and false ego. So we know regarding this 84 lakh species of material bodies. So as opposed to, not to say as opposed, we can clearly see that the modern scientific theory, which we were being fed in school, is completely inadequate to explain the entire mystery of this universe. In fact, from the Bhagavatam, when we look at the Purusha Avatar concept, Mahavishnu, beginning from Mahavishnu, every bubble from his bodily pores form one universe. So it is from the Bhagavatam that this concept of a multiverse, it actually came from the Bhagavatam. So the so-called modern scientific theory is completely inadequate even to explain the mystery of one universe. So the so-called modern scientists say that only in Earth there are living entities who have intelligence. But we have seen that throughout each material universe, because since there are many innumerable material universes which emanate from the body of Mahavishnu, and we know that each material universe is administered by one Garbhodakashayi Vishnu, and there's one Brahma for each universe. So, in each universe, there are 14 planetary systems. So the 84 lakh material bodies, species of material bodies, are meant to accommodate various living entities, all the conditioned living entities in all the material universes. So it is also stated here that all these living entities are of one spiritual nature, in quality the same as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is what Krishna says in Gita 15.7. Mama yaso jivaloke jiv bhuta sanatana. Manasastani prakristani kasyati. So all the living entities, all the conditioned living entities who live in the material universe, all spread, they are all spread all over the 14 planetary systems, taking up different material bodies based on the 84 lakh species. So there are living entities in all the planets. In the spiritual world, however, there's no such distinction between the body and the embodied. In the material world, distinctive features are manifested in different types of bodies in the various planets. So since there are 84 lakh different material bodies, though all living entities are actually the same, qualitatively they are the same, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, but since we are trapped in this material encagement of different material bodies, we we appear to be different. However, our real identity is that we are spirit souls, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. This temporary material body is just a temporary encagement which we ourselves have got due to our material desires and our past karmas. However, in the spiritual world, there's no distinction between the body and the embodied. Like Krishna himself, whenever he descends to the material world, he descends in his original transcendental position, in his original transcendental body. So the transcendental body, which we will also be getting once we attain the spiritual abode, is completely different from the material body, because the material body is decaying every moment. Starting from our birth, we have our material body has been going through a lot of changes. But one thing is for sure, it is decaying every moment. But the spiritual body is not like that. So it is completely different from the material body, where it will be more identical with the features of qualitatively identical with the features of Krishna's spiritual body. We have full information from the Vedic literature that in each and every planet, both material and spiritual, there are living entities of varied intelligence. The Earth is one of the planets of the Bhuloka planetary system. There are 6 planetary systems above Bhuloka and 7 planetary systems below it. Therefore, the entire universe is known as Caturdaśa-Bhuvana, indicating that it has 14 different planetary systems. Beyond the planetary systems in the material sky, there is another sky which is known as Paravyoma, or the spiritual sky, where there are spiritual planets. So regarding this spiritual sky, and also regarding the Supreme Abode, we saw a lot of details regarding the Supreme Abode in our previous session last week, titled Param Dhamma, Supreme Abode. So that even regarding the Supreme Abode, we saw that there are different regions. Like we in the material world, we are now located in this place called Devi Dhamma in the material world. So above Devi Dhamma, there's Manisha Dhamma. Then Vaikuntha and Golokadam. So we also saw how those dams are related to one another, and how different living entities can actually attain the spiritual sky through devotional service. The inhabitants of those planets engage in varieties of loving service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which include different rasas or relationships known as Dasyaras, Sakyaras, Vatsalyaras, Madhuryaras, and above all, Parakyaras. These Parakyaras or paramount love is prevalent in Krishna Loka, where Lord Krishna lives. This planet is also called Goloka Vrindavana, and although Lord Krishna lives there perpetually, he also expands himself in millions and trillions of forms. In one of such forms, he appears on this material planet in a particular place known as Vrindavan Dhama, where he displays his original pastimes of Goloka Vrindavan Dhama in the spiritual sky in order to attract the conditioned souls back home, back to Godhead. So we saw that even in Goloka Dham, there are divisions. Like Goloka is like a region in which there are divisions. So the topmost Dham is Goloka Vrindavan. Then there's also the Mathura Dham and Dwarka Dham. In all the dhams, Krishna exists. Of course, in Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna exists in his Swayam Rupa. And in the other dhamas like Mathura and Dwaraka, he also exists there by taking up different expansions, and he engages in all his different pastimes in all the different dhams. So even within the spiritual sky itself, there are many expansions of Krishna where he engages in all his pastimes, like below Golokatam, between Goloka and Vaikuntha Loka, in between we have Ayodhya Dham. So even there, Krishna is resides there in his expansion as Rama. So he engages in all his different pastimes in different expansions in all the different dhams within the spiritual sky. However, when he descends to the material world, also all the dhammas also exist in the material world, but they are known as the perverted reflection of the spiritual world. We also saw this verse from chapter 15, Gita chapter 15, 15.1. Urdo Mula Mata Shakam, Ashwatam Pravravayam, Chandam Chiyasya Paranani, Yastam Vedavid. The reflection of the banyan tree, where it seems like all the branches are moving upwards. So the material world is actually a corrupted reflection of the spiritual world. So even the dhams are the dhams in the spiritual world are also present in the material world, and Krishna descends to those dhammas in the material world to interact with the devotees. And when he descends in his original identity. So actually, I just wanted to highlight regarding this purport, because in this purport, Prabhupada clearly explains how our Vedic science is more adequate to explain the entire cosmological mysteries compared to this so-called modern science. Then in second canto of Bhagavatam, first chapter, Sukadev Goswami starts to explain regarding the material universe to Parikshit Maharaj, and it actually starts with this verse, which is also a significant verse. Patalam etasyahi padamulam patanchi parsni prapade rasatalam mahatalam vishvasrujo atagulfav talatalam vai purushasya jange. Persons who have realized it have studied that the planets known as Patala constitute the bottoms of the feet of the universal Lord, and the heels and the toes are the Rasatala planets, the ankles are the Mahatala planets, and his hands constitute the Talatala planets. So here actually when Sukadeva Goswami is giving the explanation, not just Sukadeva Goswami, as we have already seen in our previous sessions also, in this second canto, in the first chapter, we see the conversation between Sukadeva Goswami and Parikshit Maharaj regarding this topic related to the material universe. But in the fifth chapter also, chapter 5 and chapter 6, we have this conversation between Lord Brahma and Narada Muni regarding the same topics. It's just that in the conversation between Brahma and Narada Muni, Brahma will be giving more further details regarding the same topic. So here, when Sukadeva Goswami is explaining regarding the 14 planetary systems, he is actually starting from the lowest region, that is Patal Loka, because that represents the feet of the Lord. So the significance of this verse is explained in the purport. The universe is divided into 14 planetary systems. 7 planetary systems called Bhurvasva, Mar, Janas, Tapas, and Satya are upward planetary systems, one above the other. There are also 7 planetary systems downward, known as Atala, Vitala, Stala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala, gradually one below the other. In this verse, the description begins from the bottom because it is in the line of devotion that the Lord's bodily description should begin from his feet. Sukadeva Goswami is a recognized devotee of the Lord, and he is exactly correct in the description. So, though Patal Loka is the lowest planet in the entire 14 planetary systems, but it actually represents the feet of the Lord. So, even when describing the 14 planetary systems, Sukadeva Goswami starts from the lowest part, because he starts by describing the feet of the Lord. So even when we worship the deity of Krishna, it is also suggested that we should always focus on the lotus feet of the Lord and gradually progress towards his face. So we have seen 2.126. Next, in 2.127, Sukadeva Goswami continues the description. The knees of the universal form are the planetary system of the name Sutala, and the 2 thighs are the Vitala and Atala planetary systems. The hips are the Mahitala, and the outer space is the depression of his navel. So, starting from the feet, which represents the lowest planet, the description progresses upwards for describing each of the planets. So the lowest one is Patala, then above Patala is Rasatala, then above Rasatala is Mahatala, above Mahatala is Talatala, then above Talatala is Sutala, then above Sutala is Vitala, above Vitala is Atala. So here the 7 lower planetary systems have been described. The chest of the original personality of the gigantic form is the luminary planetary system. His neck is the Mar planet. His mouth is the Janas planet. And his forehead is the Tapas planetary system. The topmost planetary system, known as Satyaloka, is the head of he who has 1,000 heads. So from the bottom part was described as representing the lower planetary systems. Now the upper body is described as representing the upper planetary systems. His arms are the demigods shaded by Indra. The 10 directional sides are his ears, and physical sound is his sense of hearing. His nostrils are the 2 Ashwini Kumaras, and material fragrance is his sense of smell. His mouth is the blazing fire. So first, the body parts are described as representing the different planetary systems, and then slowly the other the other parts are also described as the abodes of all the demigods. So we have also seen this in the topic titled Virat Rupa. These are the verses from chapter 1 of the second canto. These were described by Shukadev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj. Then in chapter 5 of the second canto, Brahma is describing regarding the same topic to Narada Muni, but he is giving further details. In 2.535, Brahma says, the Lord Mahavishnu, although lying in the causal ocean, came out of it and dividing himself as Hiranyagarbha, he entered into each universe and assumed the Virat Rupa with thousands of legs, arms, mouths, heads, etc. Great philosophers imagine that the complete planetary systems in the universe are displays of the different upper and lower limbs of the universal body of the Lord. So quite similar to what was described by Shukadev Goswami. The lower planetary systems up to the limit of the earthly stratum are said to be situated in his legs. The middle planetary systems beginning from Bhuvaloka are situated in his navel, and the still higher planetary systems occupied by the demigods and highly cultured sages and saints are situated in the chest of the Supreme Lord. So similar to the description given by Sukadeva Goswami, Brahma also describes that the different parts of the Virat Purusha or the Supreme Lord, they actually represent the different divisions, because the 14 planetary systems are often divided into 3 divisions commonly. The lower division refers to the 7 lower planetary systems. Then the middle division, the lower division is known as Adoloka for the 7 lower planetary systems. The middle part where the Earth planet is located is known as Madhyaloka, and the upper region, which consists of 6 upper planetary systems, is known as Urdhvaloka. So the 3 divisions represent the 3 parts of the body of the Supreme Lord. There are 14 spheres of planetary systems within this universe. The lower systems are called Bhuvaloka, the middle systems are called Bhuvaloka, and the higher planetary systems up to Brahmaloka, the highest planetary system of the universe, are called Svarloka. And all of them are situated on the body of the Lord. In other words, no one within this universe is without a relationship with the Lord. So this entire material universe in which we are trapped currently it consists of these 14 planetary systems. So all the conditioned living entities are within these 14 planetary systems, and these planetary systems actually correspond to the bodily features of the Lord. So as what we saw in the previous descriptions. So from there itself, it can be seen that all the conditioned living entities are still dependent on the Supreme Lord. Actually, we came to this material world because we had our material desires and we wanted to be independent from the Lord's control. But we know that even when we are in the spiritual sky, even when we are in Goloka Vrindavan, we will be subject to the internal energy of Krishna. And even when we want to enjoy in this material world, when we want to actually be Purushas and Ishwaras, controllers and enjoyers, even then we are still subject to the external energy of Krishna. So we can never really be free from the Lord's control because he is the supreme controller. So even if we look at the context of the planetary systems, even those divisions of the planetary systems actually correspond to the different body parts of the Supreme Lord. And this is only referring to one of the material universe. We know there are innumerable material universes in this in the entire Mahatattva. And here's also another important verse regarding the upper planetary systems. From the forefront of the chest up to the neck of the universal form of the Lord are situated the planetary systems named Janaloka and Tapaloka, whereas Satyaloka, the topmost planetary system, is situated on the head of the form. The spiritual planets, however, are eternal. So the fourth line, it states Brahmaloka Sanatana. Usually there's this, we often see that the terms Brahmaloka and Satyaloka are often used interchangeably. But when we talk about the upper planetary systems, above the Earth planet, right above the Earth planet, we have Bhurloka. Then above Bhurloka, it's Swarloka. Then Maharloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, and Satyaloka. Satyaloka is actually the abode of Brahma. However, there's even the term Brahmaloka is often used to describe the abode of Brahma. However, that's not very accurate. The actual word for the abode of Brahma is Satyaloka. In the context of this verse, it clearly refers to the spiritual sky. Brahmaloka Sanatana refers to the spiritual planets. So it is stated here, the spiritual planets are eternal. So it is quite similar to what we saw in one of our previous sessions titled Supreme Brahman. So in that session, in the beginning itself, we saw some details related to the word definitions. Like we saw the meaning of the word Brahman. We also saw the meaning of the word Brahma and also the word Brahmana. So if we look at the Sanskrit grammar, I also provided the noun declension table of how the original word Brahman was the other forms like Brahma and Brahmana were actually formed through the noun declension. So even the words like Brahma and Brahmana are also related to Brahman. So according to the commentary of prominent acharyas, they say that Brahmaloka should refer to the spiritual planets, and the abode of Lord Brahma should be termed as Satyaloka. However, there's always this tendency to use them interchangeably. Many times in these pages, we have discussed the spiritual planets situated beyond the material sky, and the description is corroborated in this verse. The word Sanatana is significant. This very idea of eternity is expressed in the Bhagavad Gita 8.20, where it is said that beyond the material creation is the spiritual sky, where everything is eternal. Sometimes Satyaloka, the planet in which Brahma resides, is also called Brahmaloka. But the Brahmaloka mentioned here is not the same as the Satyaloka planetary system. This Brahmaloka is eternal, whereas the Satyaloka planetary system is not eternal. And to distinguish between the two, the adjective Sanatana has been used in this case. According to Jiva Goswami, this Brahmaloka is the loka or abode of Brahman or the Supreme Lord. In the spiritual sky, all the planets are as good as the Lord himself. So the original meaning of Brahmaloka should be reserved to refer to the abode of Brahman or the Supreme Lord. So it is always best to use the term Satyaloka when we are referring to the abode of Brahma. The Lord is all spirit, and his name, fame, glories, qualities, pastimes, etc. are all non-different from him because he is absolute. As such, the planets in the kingdom of God are also non-different from him. In those planets, there is no difference between the body and the soul, nor is there any influence of time as we experience it in the material world. And in addition to there being no influence of time, the planets in Brahmaloka, due to being spiritual, are never annihilated. So even in chapter 8 of Gita, in 8.15 onwards, there are descriptions of how this material universe keeps, it undergoes cycles of creation and annihilation. Like even during the 1 day period of Brahma, during the day, the universe becomes manifest. And then during his night, it becomes unmanifest. Then after 100 years of Brahma, once his lifetime expires, then the entire material universe is destroyed completely. So even at that time, actually, once Brahma's lifetime expires, even he has to die. However, the actual Brahmaloka, which is described by Acharyas, refer to the spiritual planets. All variegatedness in the spiritual planets is also one with the Lord, and therefore the Vedic aphorism Ekam Eva Dvitiyam is fully realized in that Sanatana atmosphere of spiritual variegatedness. This material world is only a shadow of phantasmagoria of the spiritual kingdom of the Lord, and because it is a shadow, it is never eternal. The variegatedness in the material world of duality, spirit and matter, cannot be compared to that of the spiritual world. So we have also seen a lot of comparisons regarding the material world and the spiritual world. Like in the spiritual world, there's no difference between body and soul, because in the spiritual world, the transcendental body or spiritual body does not have any material covering. But here we have this material covering, and it keeps decaying every moment. And in the spiritual world, there's no influence of time. But here, our main problem is time. We are all subject to time. Even the so-called atheists cannot deny the fact that they are also being subjected to the influence of time. And in Gita 11.32, there's a verse where Krishna says, Kalosmi loka shayakri pravruddho, time I am. So time is also a representation of Krishna. So even those so-called atheists who deny the existence of God still cannot deny that they are being subjected to the influence of time. So our main problem is that we all take up different material bodies for a specific period of time. And if we don't do the right thing during that period of time, then we'll have to discard that material body and be encaged in another material body. And this cycle keeps repeating. As we know, the vicious cycle of the Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. So since now we have got this precious human form of life, this human material body, it is best that we make the most out of it without wasting time, so that we can be liberated from this material bondage. Because of a poor fund of knowledge, less intelligent persons sometimes mistake the conditions of the shadow world to be equivalent to those of the spiritual world. And thus they mistake the Lord and his pastimes in the material world to be one with the conditioned souls and their activities. The Lord condemns such less intelligent persons in the Bhagavad Gita 9.11. This is where Krishna says, Avajanati Mamura. When I descend to the material world in my original form, fools don't recognize me and they try to degrade me. They don't know my original position. Whenever the Lord incarnates, he does so in his full internal potency, Atma Maya, and less intelligent persons mistake him to be one of the material creations. Srila Sridhara Swami, therefore rightly commenting on this verse, says that the Brahmaloka mentioned here is Vaikuntha, the kingdom of God, which is Sanatana or eternal, and is therefore not exactly like the material creations described above. The Virat universal form of the Lord is an imagination for the material world. It has nothing to do with the spiritual world or the kingdom of God. So, though there's always this tendency to use the terms Satyaloka and Brahmaloka interchangeably, our acharyas clearly recommend that we should use the term Brahmaloka to refer to the spiritual world, which is distinct from the material world. So it is best to describe the abode of Brahma as Satyaloka. However, from another perspective, just as we saw from the topic on Supreme Brahman, we saw that when people utter aphorisms like Aham Brahmasmi or Sarvam Kalu Idam Brahma, so it can be explained that we are part and parcels of the Supreme Brahman, so we are also Brahman. However, the Supreme Brahman will always be distinct from us. So, though the material world is also comes under the kingdom of God, still it should be distinguished from the spiritual world, because as we have just seen, there are so many different qualities between the two worlds. Then Brahma also continues the description. He has already described regarding the upper planetary systems. Then he continues, my dear son Nada, know from me that there are 7 lower planetary systems out of the total 14. The first planetary system, known as Atala, is situated on the waist. So now Brahma's description is actually starting from the topmost lower planetary system. Like Shukadev Goswami started from the lowest Patala, but actually in Brahma's description, it starts from the topmost of the 7 lower planetary systems. Atala is situated on the waist. The second Vitala is situated on the thighs. The third Sutala on the knees. The fourth Talatala on the shanks. The fifth Mahatala on the ankles. The sixth Rasatala on the upper portion of the feet. And the seventh Patala on the soles of the feet. Thus, the Virat form of the Lord is full of all planetary systems. So, Brahma already described the upper planetary systems, starting from the top. Now he covered the bottom part of the body of the Supreme Lord by describing the lower planetary systems. Modern enterprises, the astronauts who travel in space, may take information from Srimad Bhagavatam that in space there are 14 divisions of planetary systems. The situation is calculated from the earthly planetary system, which is called Bhurloka. Above Bhurloka is Bhurloka, and the topmost planetary system is called Satyaloka, the abode of Brahma. These are the upper 7 lokas or planetary systems, and similarly, there are 7 lower planetary systems known as Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala lokas. All these planetary systems are scattered over the complete universe, which occupies an area of 2 billion times 2 billion square miles. The modern astronauts can travel only a few thousand miles away from the Earth, and therefore their attempt to travel in the sky is something like child's play on the shore of an expansive ocean. So neither the so-called modern scientific knowledge nor the modern technology is adequate to completely explore the total mystery of the entire cosmology. However, that's what we have been fed in from our school days. But the Bhagavatam contains the entire explanation for it. The moon is situated in the third status of the upper planetary system, and in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we shall be able to know the distance situation of the various planets scattered over the vast material sky. So the descriptions in the second canto, which also progress further in the third canto, and then a little further more in fourth canto, followed by the fifth canto, in which there are much more detailed descriptions. So it's not possible to cover everything. Actually, for the fifth canto itself, for each of those chapters will require one whole session to cover the details described in the fifth canto. There are innumerable universes beyond the one in which we are put, and all these material universes cover only an insignificant portion of the spiritual sky, which is described above as Sanatana Brahmaloka. As what we saw in last week's session also, if we look at the entire creation, the entire kingdom of God, this material universe, even the entire Mahatattva, which is described as a dark cloud, which is devoid of the Brahmajyoti effulgence, only makes up 1/4 of the entire kingdom of God. The remaining 3/4 consists of the Sanatana Brahmaloka, the spiritual sky. So even in this insignificant portion of 1/4, there are so many mysteries. The Supreme Lord very kindly invites the intelligent human beings to return home back to Godhead in the following verse of the Bhagavad Gita 8.16. Abrahma Bhuvana Loka Punaravastino Arjuna Mama Petya tu Kaunteya Punarjanma na Vidyate. So in this verse from Gita, Krishna explains that all the 14 planetary systems, starting from the abode of Brahma, even towards Patal Loka, all the places are places of misery, where there's always this vicious cycle of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. Because even the topmost living entity, Brahma, has to die after 100 years. Beginning from Satyaloka, the topmost planet of the universe, situated just below the eternal Brahmaloka, meaning the Satyaloka or abode of Brahma is below the eternal Brahmaloka or the spiritual sky. So when we suppose if we get liberated from this material universe, we will be progressing from the current Earth planet, passing through all the other upper planetary systems. Then even we'll get elevated past Satyaloka, the abode of Brahma, and then we'll completely get out of the material sky and enter the spiritual sky. And one situation in any of the many material planets is still subject to the laws of material nature, namely birth, death, old age, and disease. But one can get complete liberation from all the above mentioned material pangs when one enters into the eternal Brahmaloka Sanatana atmosphere, the kingdom of God. Therefore, liberation as contemplated by the speculative philosophers and the mystics is possible only when one becomes a devotee of the Lord. Anyone who is not a devotee cannot enter into the kingdom of God. Only by attainment of a service attitude in the transcendental position can one enter into the kingdom of God. Therefore, the speculative philosophers as well as the mystics must first of all be attracted to the devotional cult before they can factually attain liberation. This is what a lot of the so-called modern scientists and rationalists fail to understand. But it is entirely their choice, because as long as they are not willing to engage in devotional service, they are free to fool themselves and continue to be trapped in the vicious cycle of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. They'll just keep on taking up different material bodies, and they'll be traveling from one planet to another. They'll be going, moving up and down all these 14 planetary systems. And still in chapter 5, the conversation between Brahma and Narada Muni, Brahma continues. Others may divide the whole planetary system into 3 divisions, namely the lower planetary systems on the lakes up to the earth, the middle planetary systems on the navel, and the upper planetary systems, Swarloka, from the chest to the head of the Supreme Personality. So the 14 planetary systems are also often divided into 3 divisions, like the lower division is used to describe the 7 lower planets. The middle division, Madhya Loka, is used to describe the Earth planet, and the upper division is used to describe the 6 upper planets. Actually, if we want to go in detail, even for each one division, we'll have to devote at least like a one session to look at every division in detail. So these are just a few verses from the Gita related to the material world. In 8.15, Krishna says, Mamapeti Punarjanma Dukkalayam Ashashvatam Napnuanti Matmana Samsitim Paramam Gata. After attaining me, the great souls who are yogis in devotion never return to this temporary world, which is full of miseries, because they have attained the highest perfection. So this is the most straightforward invitation of Krishna. He is inviting all the conditioned souls back to Godhead to liberate themselves from this place of misery. Then also in 8.16, as we just saw, from the highest planet in the material world down to the lowest, all are places of misery, when repeated birth and death take place. But one who attains to my abode, O son of Kunti, never takes birth again. So even Brahma, who is there in Satyaloka, even he has to die. He also undergoes this vicious cycle of Janma Mrityu Jara Vyadhi. And for any living entity who's elevated to the position of Brahma, he still has to continue devotional service, so that he can also be elevated from Satyaloka to the spiritual sky. If any person fails to do so after having attained the position of Brahma, then that person will be degraded to the lower planets, which is very unfortunate. So here, the main point here is regarding the position of Brahma. Like, if on Brahmaloka one does not cultivate Krishna consciousness, then he must return to earth. So the position of Brahma, being the topmost living entity, is indeed a very exalted position, because he occupies the topmost planet. Even those who are below Satyaloka, there are many sages who engage in devotional service in the planets like Tapaloka. So even they are very exalted devotees, but if they fail to continue their devotional service while being in those planets, even they will be degraded to the lower planets. Then that would be the most unfortunate thing for any living entity. Those who progress in Krishna consciousness on the higher planets are gradually elevated to higher and higher planets, and at the time of universal devastation are transferred to the eternal spiritual kingdom. So it is entirely up to us. We have the chance to engage in devotional service, and we can it's not necessary for us to since now we are in the earth planet, it's not necessary for us to progress one by one. It's not like we have to go from earth to Loka, then Swarloka. There's no need to go to each and every planet before attaining the spiritual sky. From the Gita itself, Krishna has given the best recommendation. By engaging in devotional service, we can elevate ourselves from earth straight towards the spiritual sky. Baldev Vidyabhushan, in his commentary on Bhagavad Gita, quotes this verse: Brahmana Sagate Sarve Samprapte Pratisanchare Parasyante Kritatmanaha Pravishanti Parampadam. When there is devastation of this material universe, Brahma and his devotees who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness are all transferred to the spiritual universe and to specific spiritual planets according to their desires. So the one who attains the position of Brahma is actually the topmost living entity, the role model for all other living entities in the entire material universe. However, if Brahma himself does not engage in devotional service, then he will be degraded to lower planets. But if he continues his devotional service, even after attaining such a top position, he will be elevated further to the spiritual abode. And in 8.17, Krishna says, by human calculation, 1,000 ages taken together form the duration of Brahma's one day, and such also is the duration of his night. So here actually the purport contains the details regarding the calculation of Brahma's day. In one day of Brahma, there are 1,000 Chaturyugas. Chaturyugas refer to the combination of the four yugas, Satya, Treta, Dwapara, and Kali. So actually this explanation I've summarized in the other slides. So actually the most important factor here is 432K, 432,000. In Kali Yuga, the total duration is 432,000, 432K. So one Kali Yuga is actually 1 times 432K. Dwapara Yuga is times 2, Treta is times 3, Satya is times 4. So the total duration for the 4 yugas is actually 10 times 432,000, because it's 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. So 10 times 432K. So one Chaturyuga consists of 4.32 million human years. So in one day of Brahma, or the day here refers to the daytime. So 12 hours of Brahma, there are 1,000 Chaturyugas. So total 1,000 times 4.32 million, that is 4.32 billion human years. So that is just for half a day of Brahma. So one full day of Brahma is actually 8.64 billion years. And Brahma lives for 100 years. So the total lifespan of Brahma is 100 years times 360 days times 8.64 billion human years, which is equal to 311 trillion 40 billion human years. This is the total duration of Brahma's life. But the important fact is that after these 311 trillion years, even Brahma has to die. So that is the most unfortunate thing about being trapped in this material universe. And it's even more unfortunate if we fail to realize this fact even after getting a human form. And these are the factors, the same figures factored into the demigod years, because each demigod year is equal to 360 human years. So it's actually the same calculation. The same calculation expressed in terms of demigod years. So it's all the same. 311 trillion, 40 billion human years is the total duration of Brahma's life. So the purport for Gita 8.17 actually contains the details related to these calculations. So as we saw in one of the purports earlier also, we as conditioned living entities in this material world, we are always under the influence of time. So whatever we do, our karmas during our limited period of time in each material body decides our next destination, whether we are going to land in another material body or we are going to regain our spiritual body. It all depends on what we do now. Then in 8.18, Krishna says, at the beginning of Brahma's day, all living entities become manifest from the unmanifest state, and thereafter, when the night falls, they are merged into the unmanifest again. So during the daytime of Brahma, the 14 planetary systems are often represented by this lotus flower, where Satyaloka is on top of the lotus flower, and the stem is said to contain the remaining planets. On top is Satyaloka, and all the other planets are located along the stem. And Garbhodaka Vishnu is lying down there in the Garbhodaka ocean. So even in when Brahma was first created, when there was no other creation around, so when he was meditating, he wanted to find out where this lotus comes from. So from the top of the lotus flower, he actually traveled down inside the stem, going through all the other planets to find where the root was coming from. So this lotus flower is like submerged. When it is manifest, the Garbhodaka ocean subsides, so the lotus stem becomes manifest. So all the planetary systems are manifest. But during Brahma's night, the water rises and all the planets become unmanifest. Only the upper planets like Satyaloka will be still manifest during Brahma's night. But after the expiration of Brahma's 100 years, even Brahma has to die. 8.19, again and again, when Brahma's day arrives, all living entities come into being, and with the arrival of Brahma's night, they are helplessly annihilated. So this will be our condition as conditioned living entities in this material universe, as long as we fail to follow Krishna's instructions. He has given all the important instructions in the Gita itself. So if we follow his instructions, we can liberate ourselves from this helpless condition as described here. The less intelligent who try to remain within this material world may be elevated to higher planets, and then again must come down to this planet Earth. During the daytime of Brahma, they can exhibit their activities on higher and lower planets within this material world. But at the coming of Brahma's night, they are all annihilated. In the day, they receive various bodies for material activities. And at night, they no longer have bodies, but remain compact in the body of Vishnu. So all the living entities, when they become unmanifest, they merge into the body of Vishnu. Then again, they are manifest at the arrival of Brahma's day. Bhutva Bhutva Praliyate. During the day, they become manifest, and at night, they are annihilated again. Ultimately, when Brahma's life is finished, they are all annihilated and remain unmanifest for millions and millions of years. So during the life of Brahma, during every day of Brahma, when Brahma's night arrives, all the living entities below Satyaloka will be annihilated. But after 100 years of Brahma, even Brahma gets annihilated until the next Brahma is born again. And when Brahma is born again in another millennium, they are again manifest. In this way, they are captivated by the spell of the material world. So the most important point to be noted here is that even the topmost living entity, the most exalted devotee, Lord Brahma, even he has to die. So it is best if the sooner we realize this fact, the better for us. But those intelligent persons who take to Krishna consciousness use the human life fully in devotional service of the Lord, chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thus they transfer themselves, even in this life, to the spiritual planet of Krishna, and become eternally blissful there, not being subject to such rebirths. So for those who have got the human form of life, despite the fact that we are born in this earth planet, we have the golden opportunity because we can still elevate ourselves straight to the spiritual sky without having to go through each one of the upper planets. Yet there's another unmanifest nature which is eternal and is transcendental to this manifested and unmanifested matter. It is supreme and is never annihilated. When all in this world is annihilated, that part remains as it is. So the material universe keeps undergoing the cycle of creation and annihilation, but the spiritual sky is never annihilated. That which the Vedantis describe as unmanifest and infallible, that which is known as the supreme destination, that place from which, having attained it, one never returns. That is my supreme abode. So this is the distinction between the spiritual sky and the material world. Okay, before we proceed further, can we have a break for 5 minutes?
Yeah, okay, Prabhu.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Hare Krishna. Can you continue?
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Uh, there are also several other verses from, especially from the beginning of Gita, like in chapter 1 when Arjuna speaks. He also kind of represents the normal person who is always subject to dualities. Like in 1.41, Arjuna says, an increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life, both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down because the performances for offering them food and water are entirely stopped. So in the purport, Prabhupada describes all these rituals of offering food to the forefathers for liberating them. But towards the end of the purport, we can also see that one who is engaged in the devotional life is not required to perform such actions. Simply by performing devotional service, one can deliver hundreds and thousands of forefathers from all kinds of misery. So in the beginning of the Gita, especially in chapter 1, Arjuna also displays the ignorance of the common man, who is often kind of obsessed with all these rituals, and those who are devoid of the transcendental knowledge, they always tend to think in terms of dualities. So even concepts like heaven and hell are also concepts related to dualities. But if we have transcendental knowledge, we can actually think beyond the concepts of heaven and hell. Then Arjuna also says, "O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I've heard by disciplic succession that those whose family traditions are destroyed always dwell always in hell." So in the beginning of the Gita, of the beginning of the discourse itself, we can see that both Arjuna and also Krishna will be talking in terms of this heaven and hell kind of concepts. But this only happens during the beginning of the discourse. But towards the end, when Krishna says, Sarvodharman Paljatya Mamekam Saranam Raja, Aum Tvam Swarupapibhyo Mokshishami Masucha. So towards that point, the entire transcendental knowledge of the Gita has been delivered to Arjuna. So if we observe these references to heaven and hellish life in the beginning of the Gita also, it shows that before the transcendental knowledge of Gita was delivered to Arjuna, he was just like a normal person who was thinking in terms of all these dualities like heaven and hell. But after gaining knowledge of the Gita, he also understood that our ultimate goal is to satisfy Krishna and uh, gain his association in the spiritual world. Interestingly, even when Krishna speaks in Gita 2.2, he uses the term asvargyam. In Gita 2.2, actually the Krishna speaks for the first time, and so the verse starts with Sri Bhagavan Vacha. If we look at the purport, Prabhupada mainly explains regarding the definition of the term Bhagavan in two perspectives. The first half of the purport focuses on the three features of Bhagavan realization, like Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Then the second half in the second half, Prabhupada talks about the definition of Bhagavan in the context of the six opulences defined by Parashara Muni. But in this verse, the word asvargyam means that Krishna is telling Arjuna that when you refuse to do your duty as a Kshatriya, it will not lead you to higher planets, but to infamy, asvargyam. So this is actually from the last paragraph of the purport for 2.2. in the presence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Arjuna's lamentation for his kinsman is certainly unbecoming. And therefore, Krishna expressed his surprise with the word Puta, wherefrom. Such impurities were never expected from a person belonging to the civilized class of men, known as Aryans. The word Aryan is applicable to persons who know the value of life and have a civilization based on spiritual realization. Interestingly, even the meaning of this word Aryan was completely distorted by those who were lacking civilizational values. According to Mahatma Gandhi, in one of his quotes, when he was queried regarding what he thinks about the Western civilization, he replied, "I think that would be a great idea." So indirectly, he was saying that the Westerners, especially the British, they had no civilization. Interestingly, those people, they are the ones who came out with this Aryan Dravidian theory, and they completely distorted the actual meaning of the word Aryan. The word Aryan simply refers to one who is civilized. However, there were many other British lapdogs who also started this Dravidian movement. So they also always, even until now, they try to project themselves as being distinct from Aryans, who, according to them, belong to the North Indian race. But if we look at the real meaning, the one who is not Aryan, who is a non-Aryan, is simply someone who is not civilized. So based on that meaning, it actually suits the so-called Dravidian movement, because when they identify themselves as non-Aryans, then they are also admitting that they are uncivilized people. But that has got nothing to do with the North Indian, South Indian concept. Those are all rubbish, because this so-called Aryan Dravidian theory remains a theory until now. There's no substantial proof which is there to prove this, especially even in Malaysia also, we can see a lot of Bangladeshi workers. Bangladeshi people come from Bengal. I mean, before partition, it was West Bengal and Bangladesh were part of the United Bengal. So even Bangladeshis are from Bengal, so which is supposed to be part of North India. But I don't want to degrade anyone, but this nonsensical theory of dividing people according to skin color was floated by the British to divide Indians, and it was also perpetuated by the British lapdogs like this Dravida Kalagam and DMK. They tend to always identify themselves as non-Aryans. In that, but in one sense, they are correct, because non-Aryans simply mean uncivilized people. So in that sense, they are right. In 2.32, Krishna says, "O Partha, happy are the Kshatriyas to whom such fighting opportunities come unsought, opening for them the doors for the heavenly planets." So what Krishna is saying from this verse is that for any Kshatriya, when he performs his duty of fighting, he will always be elevated to the heavenly planets. So that is the main duty of a Kshatriya, and regardless of the outcome, whether he wins or loses, even if he loses, even if he gets martyred, he will still attain the heavenly planets. But here is the important thing to be noted: when a Kshatriya does his duty with a karmi mindset, just for the sake of in terms of winning or losing, without the mindset of a devotional service, still he will be elevated to the heavenly planets, where he can enjoy sense gratification. But that is the most unfortunate thing when we do our karmic duties without having the mindset of devotional service. Because even from this example of a Kshatriya, when a Kshatriya simply fights with material motivations, even if he dies, he will still be elevated to the heavenly planets. But we know that after his time expires in the heavenly planets, he still has to descend to the earth planet again. But if the same Kshatriya performs his duty as an offering to Krishna, then he can be elevated to the spiritual sky. So that is the distinction between doing about how we can actually perform our duties either with the karmic mindset or with the mindset of devotional service. But the important point here is that Krishna is also still trying to explain to Arjuna in terms of the heaven hell kind of dualities. Then in 2.33, Krishna says, if, however, you do not perform your religious duty of fighting, then you will certainly incur sins for neglecting your duties and thus lose your reputation as a fighter. So Arjuna, who was already known as a warrior having a very high reputation, he was at the risk of losing all his reputation by refusing to fight. In other words, he would go to hell not by fighting, but by withdrawing from battle. Because earlier in chapter 1, Arjuna's argument was that he would incur sins and he would be forced to go to hell if he kills his relatives. But Krishna convinces him by saying that if you refuse to fight, you're actually refusing to do your duty. So that would be a greater sin. So if we do our prescribed duties, even without any sense of devotional service, we can still be elevated to heavenly planets. But with a tinge of devotional service, we can elevate ourselves further towards the spiritual sky. So we don't have to do anything extra. We just have to go about our daily material duties, but we have to do it as an offering to Krishna so that we can be elevated to the spiritual sky and not merely to heavenly planets. In 2.37, Krishna says, O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up with determination and fight. So even up to this point, Krishna is still trying to explain to Arjuna in the context of dualities, like if you get killed in battle, you will attain heaven, or you can enjoy your kingdom in the material world. So since Arjuna was also like a common man, he was talking in terms of this heaven, hell kind of dualities. Krishna was also starting to explain in the same context, but towards the middle of chapter 2, he starts to explain towards transcendence, like beyond the dualities of heaven and hellish life. In 2.38, Krishna says, do thou fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing, you shall never incur sin. So for any soldier who fights with material motivations, he is sure to get heavenly pleasures even if he gets killed in battle. But if the same person fights and does his duty as an offering to Krishna, then he can be elevated to the supreme abode. So from this point onwards, Krishna starts to explain to Arjuna about how he should fight without worrying about the fruits of actions to avoid further bondage. So there's Krishna is instructing Arjuna to fight without worrying about the dualities. He who acts for his own sense gratification, either in goodness or in passion, is subject to the reaction, good or bad. But he who has completely surrendered himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness is no longer obliged to anyone, nor is he a debtor to anyone, or as one is in the ordinary course of activities. So Arjuna, who was thinking in terms of these dualities like heaven and hell, pious activity and sins, so to convince him, even Krishna started to explain using those using similar terms. But at one point, Krishna starts to take the discourse towards transcendence, like how to think beyond these dualities. That is only possible by engaging in Krishna consciousness. We can always engage in our material duties, but by engaging in Krishna consciousness and also by conducting our material duties, we can be liberated from the material bondage. Men of small knowledge are very much attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities for elevation to heavenly planets, resultant good birth, power, and so forth. Being desirous of sense gratification and opulent life, they say that there is nothing more than this. So the so-called jnanis who engage in karma kanda, aiming for heavenly pleasures, they are not jnanis actually, because they are merely trying to enjoy more sense gratification in the heavenly planets. And after a point, once their piety expires, they still have to come back to the earth planet. So that is not what a jnani does. Also in 9.20, Krishna says, those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. Purified of sinful reactions, they take birth on the pious heavenly planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. So it's actually a waste of time to engage in the karma kanda activities to accumulate this type of piety, where we can only enjoy for a limited time in the so-called heavenly planets. When they have thus enjoyed vast heavenly sense pleasure and the results of their pious activities are exhausted, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, those who seek sense enjoyment by adhering to the principles of the three Vedas achieve only repeated birth and death. So whether we engage in pious activities to attain heaven, or if we engage in sinful activities to the point where we get degraded to hellish planets, we are still going to remain in the material world. So that is the most unfortunate thing. So from the Gita perspective, when we look at these planetary systems, the Gita teaches us to think beyond all these dualities of heavenly and hellish life, and to move towards transcendence, to focus towards the spiritual abode. And also in 9.25, Krishna says, Yanti Devrata Devan, Pitruyanti Pitruta, Bhutani Yanti Bhuteja, Yanti Manjajino Piyamam. So this one verse explains how Krishna gives freedom to all living entities to do what they want. So if we want to worship demigods, we can still enjoy their association in the planet of demigods. But if we want to liberate ourselves completely from the material universe, we just have to worship Krishna, and we will gain his association in the spiritual abode. So we have seen descriptions related to the planetary systems, and also the Gita perspective of how, as long as we don't think towards transcendence, as long as we are trapped in the dualities of the material universe, we'll either move towards the heavenly planets, enjoy that, and come back to the earth planet, or if we incur sinful if we engage in sinful activities, we will only degrade ourselves further to the lower planetary systems. or even to the hellish planets. So the knowledge of Gita teaches us to think beyond these dualities of the material universe towards transcendence. In the 5th canto of Bhagavatam, chapter 24, there's a description of all these lower planetary systems. Actually, these lower planetary systems are not exactly hellish planets, as we shall see later. In these 7 planetary systems, which are also known as the subterranean heavens, below Swarga, there are very beautiful houses, gardens, and places of sense enjoyment, which are even more opulent than those in the higher planets, because the demons have very high standards of sensual pleasure, wealth, and influence. Most of the residents of these planets, who are known as Daityas, Danavas, and Nagas, live as householders. Their wives, children, friends, and society are all fully engaged in illusory material happiness. The sense enjoyment of the demigods is sometimes disturbed, but the residents of these planets enjoy life without disturbances. Thus, they are understood to be very attached to illusory happiness. So actually, in the upper planetary systems, like below Satyaloka, there's Tapaloka and Mahaloka. Those are known as the planets of the sages. So in those upper planetary systems, the sages are constantly engaged in devotional service, and their main aim is to liberate themselves. Though they belong to the upper planets, they still want to completely elevate themselves towards the spiritual abode. But in these lower planetary systems, all the inhabitants there are completely absorbed in sense gratification. So that is why these planets are actually known as Bila Swarga, where it appears to be like heavens, but they are considered lower because they actually degrade our consciousness. So if we are born in those planets, I mean, if we take another material body and if we land in those planets, we will be further degraded towards sense enjoyment. Then we'll continually be trapped in the vicious cycle. So in the same chapter, in 5th canto, this description of the lower planetary systems are given. Beginning from Atala, in Atala, there's a demon, the son of Mayadanava, named Bala, who created 96 kinds of mystic power. So this is like a demigod in the Atala planet who had all these illusory potencies. He could bewilder anyone with his mystic potencies. So all those who enter those planets will be bewildered by the sense enjoyment. The next planet below Atala is Vitala, when Lord Shiva, who is known as the master of gold mines, lives with his personal associates, the ghosts and similar living entities. Below the planet Vitala is another planet known as Sutala, where the great son of Maharaj Virosana, Bali Maharaj, who is celebrated as the most pious king, resides even now. For the welfare of Indra, the king of heaven, Lord Vishnu appeared in the form of a dwarf, Brahmachari, as the son of Aditi and tricked Bali Maharaj by begging for only 3 paces of land, but taking all the 3 world. Being very pleased with Bali Maharaj for giving all his possessions, the Lord returned his kingdom and made him richer than the opulent king Indra. Even now, Bali Maharaj engages in devotional service by worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead in the planet of Sutala. So this is regarding the pastime of Vamadev. But this planet called Sutala is described as the abode of Bali Maharaj, which was given to him as a reciprocation. Beneath the planet known as Sutala is another planet called Talatala, which is ruled by the Danava demon named Maya. Maya is known as the Acharya of all the Mayavis who can invoke the powers of sorcery. For the benefit of the 3 worlds, Lord Shiva, who is known as Tripurari, once set fire to the 3 kingdoms of Maya, but later being pleased with him, he returned his kingdom. Since that time, Mayadanava has been protected by Lord Shiva, and therefore he falsely thinks that he need not fear the Sudarshan Chakra of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it might seem like the inhabitants of all these lower planets are more opulent than those of the higher planets. But the most unfortunate thing is that these places are so full of material opulence and sense gratification to the point where we cannot even have any thoughts about the Supreme Lord. So if we are trapped in the lower planets, though we get to enjoy more, but we will be we are actually being separated further from the Supreme Lord. The planetary system below Talatala is known as Matala. It is the abode of many hooded snakes, descendants of Kadru, who are always very angry. The great snakes who are prominent are Kuaka, Takshaka, Kalia, and Shena. The snakes in Matala are always disturbed by fear of Garuda, the carrier of Lord Vishnu. But although they are full of anxiety, some of them nevertheless fought with their wives, children, friends, and relatives. So we have heard regarding Takshaka and Kalia. Beneath Matala is the planetary system known as Rasatala, which is the abode of the demoniac sons of Diti and Danu. They are called Panis, Nivata Kavachas, Kaliyas, and Hiranyapuravasis, those living in Hiranyapura. They are all enemies of the demigods, and they reside in holes like snakes. From birth, they are extremely powerful and cruel, and although they are proud of their strength, they are always defeated by the Sudarshan Chakra of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who rules all the planetary systems. When a female messenger from Indra named Sarama chants a particular curse, the serpentine demons of Matala become very afraid of Indra. So again, though all these lower planets appear to be materially opulent, they are still like totally separated from God consciousness. The inhabitants of these lower planets don't get to think about the Supreme Lord, and therefore that's why they engage in battles against the demigods, and even the demons tend to they fool themselves trying to think of themselves as God, because they are so absorbed in sense gratification that there's just no possibility for them to develop God consciousness. Beneath Rasatala is another planetary system known as Patala or Nagaloka, where there are many demoniac serpents, the masters of Nagaloka, such as Shanka, Kulika, Mahashanka, Svetaranjaya, Dhritarashtra, Shankachuda, Kambala, Ashvatra, and Devadatta. The chief among them is Vasuki. They are all extremely angry, and they have many hoods. Some snakes, 5 hoods, some 7, some 10, others 100, and others 1,000. These hoods are bedecked with valuable gems, and the light emanating from the gems illuminates the entire planetary system of Bilaswarga. So these are the descriptions in chapter 24 of the 5th canto. The descriptions of the 7 lower planetary systems are given. They are known as Bilaswarga. They appear to be even more opulent and full of sense gratification compared to even the heavenly planets. But the difference is that all these lower planetary systems, they distance us further away from God consciousness. Then in chapter 26 of the 5th canto, the descriptions of hellish planets are given. All the hellish planets are situated in the intermediate space between the 3 worlds and the Garbhodaka ocean. They lie on the southern side of the universe, beneath Bhumandala and slightly above the water of the Garbhodaka ocean. Pitruloka is also located in this region between the Garbhodaka ocean and the lower planetary systems. All the residents of Pitruloka, headed by Agnishvata, meditate in great samadhi on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and always wish their families well. So the hellish planets are actually much lower than Patala Loka. Patala Loka is the lowest of all the lower planetary systems, And the hellish planets are even lower than Patal Loka. The king of the Pitas is Yamaraja, the very powerful son of the sun god. He resides in Pitul Loka with his personal assistants, and while abiding by the rules and regulations set down by the Supreme Lord, has his agents, the Yamadutas, bringing all the sinful men to him immediately upon their death. After bringing them within his jurisdiction, he properly judges them according to their specific sinful activities and sends them to one of the many hellish planets for suitable punishments. Some authorities say that there is a total of 21 hellish planets, and some say 28. My dear king, I shall outline all of them according to their names, forms, and symptoms. So here Sukadev Goswami is specifically describing the 28 hellish planets which are located below Patal Loka. The names of the different hells are as follows: Tamishra, Andatamisra, Raurava, Maharaurava, Kumbhipaka, Kalasutra, Asipatravana, Sukaramuka, Andakupa, Krimi Bojana, Santamsa, Tapta Surmi, Vajrakantas, Shalmali, Vaidarini, Puyoda, Prana Roda, Vishashana, Lala Vaksha, Sharameyadana, Avichi, Ayapana, Sharakaldama, Lakshokana Bojana, Sulaprota, Dandrasuka, Avata Nirodhana, Paryavratana, and Suchimuka. All those planets are meant for punishing the living entities. So these 28 hellish planets are even lower than Patal Loka, the lowest of the lower planetary systems. We have seen descriptions of the lower planetary systems, and we can also see that the hellish planets are actually lower than the lowest of the lowest planet, which is Patal Loka. It is even lower than Patal Loka, these 28 hellish planets. So in order for any human being who has taken birth in this middle Earth planet, for him to land in the hellish planet, such a person should really be having some very extraordinary qualifications. But it is also stated in the Gita 16.21 that there are 3 gateways to this hell. Trividam Nargashedam, Dwaram Nashna Atmana, Kamakroda, Tata Lobas, Tatmarida, Trayam Tarit. There are 3 gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. And in Gita 14.18, chapter 14 of the Gita talks about the 3 modes of material nature. And in verse 18, the different destinations of people living in the different modes are described. Those situated in the mode of goodness gradually go upward to the higher planets. Those in the mode of passion live on the earthly planets, and those in the abominable mode of ignorance go down to the hellish worlds. So this is why it's important to develop transcendence. Like we should gradually develop the mode of goodness, but we should also move beyond the mode of goodness, that is transcendence. Because even by developing ourselves in full mode of goodness, we can only land in the higher planets, which are still within the material world. In this verse, the results of actions in the 3 modes of nature are more explicitly set forth. There is an upper planetary system consisting of the heavenly planets where everyone is highly elevated. According to the degree of development of the mode of goodness, the living entity can be transferred to various planets in this system. The highest planet is Satyaloka or Brahmaloka, meaning Satyaloka, the abode of Brahma, where the prime person of this universe, Lord Brahma, resides. We have seen already that we can hardly calculate the wondrous condition of life in Brahmaloka, but the highest condition of life, the mode of goodness, can bring us to this. The mode of passion is mixed. It is in the middle between the modes of goodness and ignorance. The person who is not always pure, but even if he should be purely in the mode of passion, he will simply remain on this earth as a king or rich man. Because we as human beings, by default, our setting is that we are always dominated by the mode of passion. That's why we have landed in this earth planet in this human form. But because there are mixtures, one can also go down. People on this earth in the mode of passion or ignorance cannot possibly approach the higher planets by machine. In the mode of passion, there's also the chance of becoming mad in the next life. So being blessed with the human form of life, it is best if we at least develop the mode of goodness. Our default setting is that we are in pure the mode of pure passion. So at least we should develop the mode of goodness rather than being degraded to the mode of ignorance. The lowest quality, the mode of ignorance, is described here as abominable. The result of developing ignorance is very, very risky. It is the lowest quality in material nature. Beneath the human level, there are 8 million species of life, birds, beasts, reptiles. And according to the development of the mode of ignorance, people are brought down to these abominable conditions. The word tamasa is very significant here. Tamasa indicates those who stay continuously in the mode of ignorance without rising to a higher mode. Their future is very dark. There is an opportunity for men in the modes of ignorance and passion to be elevated to the mode of goodness. And that system is called Krishna consciousness. But one who does not take advantage of this opportunity will certainly continue in the lower modes. So even if we don't elevate ourselves to the mode of goodness or pure goodness, Shuddha Sattva, that is transcendence, it is also important to make sure that we don't degrade ourselves further to the point where we land in hellish planets in our next life. So in relation to the 14 planetary systems which we have seen, we will, as long as we don't seriously engage in devotional service, we are only going to keep taking up all these 84 lakh material bodies, and we'll be traveling to all these different planetary systems. So the only solution to our problems is to engage in devotional service and simply follow all the instructions given by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, so that we can go to Goloka, back to Godhead. So that's all for today's session. Thank you for attending, and Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
No, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot for your time.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you, Prabhu.